There's Hamilton in his butt. You're welcome. Hi. Welcome to Knitting My Shit Together, a knitting podcast where neurodiversity and yarn collide. This is episode 5. I think the title I'm going to come up with this episode is Sock Fatigue. I think that's what it's going to be. My name is Farah. If you are a first-time viewer, welcome. Glad to have you. If you have watched the podcast before, welcome back. I'm glad you're back. I can be found on Ravelry and Instagram as @FarahKnits. We'll see. I'm going to try and see if I can figure out a way to put it on the screen with me, but if not, then something's going to pop up that says @FarahKnits. Every week I'm kind of exploring, as I put out new episodes, more and more things to change and tweak. You might have noticed when the podcast began, I had a little warning slide. If someone couldn't guess from the title of the podcast, Knitting My Shit Together, this will be a swear word friendly environment. And that doesn't mean it will be filled with them, but I don't want to have to think about it and censor and I want to swear when I want to. Because sometimes some shit is really just shit and you just need to say shit. So yeah, you might notice I'm in a new space, and that is because I rearranged the furniture in my room to make like a little knitting nook. Up until now, I have shelves alongside my bed, and I've just been kind of chilling there, and it just doesn't make my tools as accessible and reachable, and I don't love it as much. And so I kind of rearranged everything, and I have my yarn all here in a little case here. I put pictures on my Instagram yesterday, and it's just a really cozy, inspiring spot. And I have like my favorite wingback chair here now, so I can sit and knit in it as much as I want. And I like it because I just didn't have to invest any money, just rearranging what I already have. I did order bins from Target, because I have like the Calyx Cube shelf system, and my yarn's in it right now. But I want to protect my yarn from moths, and I know there's different essential oils that they avoid, and like cedar. So I'm gonna put, and these bins have lids too, and only like 2 little openings where the handles are, and they're clear, which I love. So I got clear bins with handles and lids. I think I'm gonna make little sachets of the essential oils and put it in there with the yarn to try and keep moths away, but I'll still be able to see what's in the bin because it's clear. So I'm happy about that. Maybe I'll take a picture and put it in here too of the bins, and or where the shelves will be, and maybe I'll include a couple of the photos I put yesterday of what my space looks like. I really like it, and I even rearranged it after I put the Instagram photos on. I switched out the couch and chair, and yeah, now I have to completely purge and just stuff I need to get rid of and go through and straighten and clean. So yeah, that's the environment explanation of why I'm in a different place. And this is hopefully where I'll be from now on, because I really like this space. What I'm wearing. So it is 30 degrees in Minneapolis today in May. It's going to be 80 later in the week. I don't know what happened. We obviously had a front come through, and it brought rain and cooler temps today. And it's kind of been rainy and gray all weekend, but today was the coldest day. The upside of 30 degrees Fahrenheit in May is you can bring out the sweater unit for yourself and wear it again. So this is the Daelin Pullover by Isabel Kramer, who I love. I knit it in Knit Picks Wool of the Andes tweed. And if you'll notice, I can't remember the colorway, but if you're a new viewer, I always say this. I really keep my Ravelry updated. So if you want information about something I show that I've knit or a pattern or whatever, go to Ravelry, Farrah Knits is my username, and look in my notebook and it will be there. But you'll see, I don't know if you can see, so this is garter stitch on the back and stockinette on the front. And then if you'll look, the garter like kind of comes down at an angle. So it's not, I don't know, I really like it. I like the sweater. It was a fun knit. It was an easy knit. It's warm and I like this color on me and I'm happy to be able to wear it. So that is what I am wearing. Let's see. FOs. I don't have any FOs. I have quasi FOs, but I'm going to put them into whips technically, and you'll like see why. Also, I think another reason I don't have FOs is I've always kind of had this, you know, one of the things I'm working through in therapy and all of that is getting away from perfectionism and weird little rules I invent for myself in my brain. And one of the rules I had was you could only knit one thing at a time. Like I was kind of forcing myself to be a monogamous knitter. And I think what that resulted in is me not knitting as much because if there was something that I didn't want to knit, I just wouldn't, rather than cast on something different. So I'm kind of just exploring, no, if I want to cast something on, I'm going to cast it on. So I have a lot to show you in whips. Yeah, and that will be forthcoming in just a second. I'm trying to think if there's any other random updates. Oh yeah, I do have a random update. So there is an Instagram account. I believe it is moderated by several people. I don't know how many people moderate it, but a handful, I believe. I'm not sure. If 2 for sure, maybe 3. I don't know. Anyway, it's on Instagram. It's called Disabled Makers. And it is for people of disabilities you can see and disabilities you can't see. And plenty of neurodivergent. They often will tackle topics for neuroatypical folks like me and people with various disabilities. And they put in their story one day, so I began following them, and then one day they put in their story, hey, you know, people will put the little description captions on their Instagram posts or make sure closed captioning is enabled on their YouTube videos, but what about our Instagram videos? Like, shouldn't we want as many people to see those as possible, or have them be accessible to everyone? So they use an app on their Android, but they didn't say the name of their app. So I messaged them and I was like, hey, what's the name? So we chatted back and forth because I would really want to have captions on my Instagram story videos, which I'm going to from now on. So I just want to share the information with everybody else. So the apps, there's 2 different apps, one for Android, one for iPhone. For the Android, it's called, AutoCaps, I think. Auto Caption or AutoCaps. And then for Android, or for iPhone, that's the Android one. For iPhone, it's called Clips. I know, because that's the one I have. It's free. And what you do is, in both of them, I believe, this is how it works. You record a video using that app and it automatically adds in captioning, and then you save it to your phone, and then you would upload it to Instagram from there. So it's like, you're not really adding that many extra steps, maybe one more, but I would think it's worth it to me so that my Instagram stories are accessible to everybody. I know I have it turned on Instagram where it will put captions for people, and I make my YouTube videos closed captioned as well. And I went and tested that the other day because I thought I remembered turning that setting on, but I wanted to verify. So I went and tested it, and yes, it is true. Oh, and look, I don't know if you can totally see, it's cut off, and I don't feel like moving the phone because it's like precariously balanced on a box leaning against a yarn bowl right now. But part of my making my knitting nook was I put the Elizabeth Zimmerman quote, knit on with confidence and hope through all crises. I love Elizabeth Zimmerman. I mean, I know she's not alive anymore, but I have several of her books and really appreciate what she contributed to knitting. So, yeah, so first off, one thing, you should follow Disabled Makers. They also have a Disabled Makers IG hashtag that you can follow. And it's some sewists, knitters, crocheters, all different kinds of makers. And it's a fun account. So that's that. Now let's get to works in progress, because I have a lot to share with you on works in progress. Okay. So part of setting up the Knitting Nook was organizing all my stuff and going through my stash, and which isn't huge, but going through it and organizing my projects, and which made me realize, this is what I've kind of been doing is not putting every project in a project bag, but even though I have several project bags, but just switching them in and out of one. And I just realized why am I doing that? It makes yarn get tangled and all the things. So I finally put each of my projects in a project bag in the basket. So I will share out of here. Okay. I think the first work in progress I want to share, is my Mother's Day socks. Okay, other than the heel, they are done. So I have both totally done. This is the Slip Stitch Lines pattern by Les Maisons de Saba, and I am using Urban Girl yarns in the Admiral Grace Hopper colorway. I've talked about these several podcasts now, which is why they just need to be done. I promise you they will be an FO by next week. So I have where the heels are going to go marked. I wanted to try doing a true afterthought heel and see what that was like. I'm going to use the Kirby Werby method, which I'll put a link to. I'll put it in the mentions playlist on my channel, and then I'll put a link to it in the show notes too. So, basically I'll be cutting along here and putting in heels. But Urban Girl Yarns is great yarn, but it's like, it's a little bit, like, I think it was $30 for the skein. So I didn't want to do my first time practicing a real afterthought heel on the fancy yarn, or like the more costly yarn. Not necessarily more fancy, more costly. So, and by the way, like, I have this much left over, plenty. So some of this will be going in my yarn bowl where I put scraps of more than 100 yards. I mean, some of that will get used by the heel, but not too much. So yeah, so I have to put the heels in, which I plan on doing this evening after I record. However, to practice that, I also have done 2 of the ankle socks for my youngest child's college box of socks. They're going to college in the fall, and I'm knitting them a box of socks in case you hadn't seen that on a previous episode. So these are just ankle socks. I am kind of making up the pattern as I go. These are using Patton's Croy in the blue striped rag colorway that you can get at Michael's and Joann. That's where I got these. It's a little splitty, but I really love this colorway with the like kind of marled rainbow stripes. I really like it. It's fun. So I have where the heels are gonna go marked on these as well. And I'm gonna do these first along with the video tonight. And then I'll put in the heel on the blue striped rag, or I'll at least get to the part on these where I just start knitting in the round, and then I'll get the other pair going and then complete these. Yeah. So hopefully by tomorrow, maybe, hopefully within the next day or two, I will have 2 pairs of socks done. And then today, my nephew, that's why I'm podcasting late today and it's going to go up late. My nephew was confirmed, and so my brother's ex-wife is Catholic, and so they raised the boys Catholic, and so it was in the rest of my family were all Lutheran. So it was in like the big cathedral in St. Paul, Minnesota. So my sister and I bused there together from Minneapolis and did transit together. And so I also knew it's going to be a mass. It's going to be like an hour and a half to 2 hours long. I'm bringing socks to knit. So I brought those today. So I finished the ones I just showed, the blue stripe drag ones, on the train home, and then I picked up another pair I'd had set aside. These are also going to be for my youngest college box of socks. These will be ankle socks too. I'll probably do an afterthought heel in these two. We'll see after I do it on these two if I decide to do that or put in a fish lips kiss heel. I don't know. I kind of like the concept of afterthought heel. We'll see how I like it. So yeah, this is just another vanilla ankle sock pattern. Yeah, which leads me to my title today of today's podcast, sock fatigue. So theoretically, once I finish these, I'm supposed to be casting on socks for my dad using the yarn I got for that from Forest Fiber Arts, which, let me grab it out of the shelf. It's right here. Yeah, using this yarn, which is called Lake Life, and it is by Forest Fiber Arts. It's their 4-ply sock that Nikki dyes. And I love this yarn, and I am going to use this yarn. However, I just don't know that I can bring myself to knit another pair of socks that is not self-striping yarn. So self-striping yarns are fun. They keep my attention. Yeah. I just think I need to take a break from socks because, like, my mom's Mother's Day socks, if you've been following, these have taken me so long because I had to rip them out. The second sock too, I started knitting and then realized I'd done the patterning on the top and bottom of the foot again. I don't know why. So yeah, I've just had to rip these out and start over so many times that it just got, I'm just over it. Like, other than doing a vanilla sock with self-striping yarn, I have sock fatigue and I need to take a break. And there's all these garments that I want to knit that are in my queue that I have the yarn for, but I've been focusing on getting these done. So, and other things, but yeah, sock fatigue, it's real. So basically, yeah, I'm going to take a sock break other than working on some for Issa's box of socks, but those are self-striping and I'll get self-striping yarns for them and it will be fine. So yeah, once I have the heels in on these, that will be my yarn break for a while. So then that leaves me this yarn for my dad, and I was actually even going to design a pair of socks, and I have the design in my head. I'm thinking maybe what I'll do is just do that for him next year. But then I was like, well, what do I do? Because I have this yarn, and granted, I could always go get another yarn, but I love this yarn and this is just him. I want to use this yarn for his gift. So several years ago, I knit a hat out of fingering weight yarn, and it's a men's hat, and it's called Ribbed for His Pleasure is the name of the hat. It was lovely, lovely hat. And I don't think my dad has like a winter stocking hat or hat that's dressy, to wear with like his nicer wool jacket and stuff like that in the winter. So like when he's going to church on Sundays or out for dinner with my mom, I think he just mainly has his other hats that he wears for like when he's snow blowing the driveway or whatever, or deer hunting. So I think I'm going to use this to knit the hat for my dad. And I think I'm going to do the Ribbed for His Pleasure hat. And that way I don't have to knit socks. I don't know. Maybe I'll just I know Father's Day's in June. Maybe I'll just take a week break after I get the heels in those other ones and see how I feel and then decide and not decide now. But I have a plan B. So that kind of gives me some freedom that if I do change my mind, it's totally fine. So yeah, that's what that is about. Okay, I have more whips. Again, decided to let go of the perfectionism of monogamous knitting. Okay. I also have, so if you saw last week's episode, I had gotten minis in the mail when I got home from Denver, and all three were surprises, and all three completely matched. I don't know how. And I was like, last week on the episode, I was like, what will I do with them? And then literally the next day, Stephen West announced he was putting out a shawl called the Spring Cleaning Shawl. And he said it's a really great to like use those single skeins of sock yarn you have that you don't know what to do with and smaller amounts. So I was like, ooh, this could be a possibility. And I'm using the minis for that. So the minis are enough, totally. So the pattern uses 7 colors. 4 of the colors use 90 yards or less. So I'm going to use 3 of the minis, the 3 minis, and then some scrap yarn I have. So this is section 1 done. Isn't that lovely? And this is in Muse Fibers. They are located in Hastings, Minnesota. I talked about them last episode. Sarah is the owner. Hi, Sarah. And this is Finch, I believe is the name of the colorway. And she had sent me a mini of this with some things I ordered. How beautiful is that? It's so lovely. So, and I wish I had feel camera because it's so soft. It's a single ply. I can't remember what the name of the base is. I'll put it up on the show notes, or the little pop-up thing, so it will be up here. Yeah, I love it. So I'm using that mini. So to go with that, the other 3 smaller skeins, I am going to be using this mini that came from Forest Fiber Arts, Nikki. And this was in my May Color of the Month Club kit. This was the mini that came with the Mayflowers sock yarn. And then the other yarn is this kind of navy-ish. And you can't really see in the light, but it is, oh, there, you kind of see it's navy. And this is from Stitch Together. And look at how these 3 go. Isn't that incredible? So this will be 3 of the 4 smaller amounts. And then I was going to do a different yarn. I even started knitting it up, but then I discovered a mistake that involved short rows and I had to rip back. And before I ripped back, I started cleaning and setting up my knitting nook. And I found and remembered this. This is a scrap of Malabrigo sock I have. I believe it is less. I believe it will work because, so for section 1, the mini I had was 85 yards and I have this much left over. So I have a little chunk left over. So I think this should be plenty. Yeah, so this will be section 2. This will be section 3 and 4. I'm going to use my contrasting color. I have some black, and you use this just for some edging and knit 2 together yarn over sections that kind of separate. Like you can see there's an I-cord edging. I've never done I-cord edging either, and I really like it. It's like super fun and it leaves such a nice finished edge. So I'm going to use that black in between the sections because I had it on hand and I'm like, black goes almost with everything, so why not? Okay, so that is my spring cleaning shawl using various yarns, but we're not done yet with whips. There is more. Okay, I haven't really made any progress since last week on this, since last week's episode, but I'll quick show it anyway. Oop, I just dropped a stitch. Or 4. Okay, this is the Shaker Rag top, which is in Mason-Dixon Knitting issue 6, their little, field guides. This is in number 6, which is called Transparency. I keep pulling these stitches out, but it's a sticky yarn, so it'll be fine. And this is a top that I hope to be wearing hopefully soon. It's not huge, so yeah, but I am knitting it in Holst Yarn Coast, which is a wool cotton blend in fingering weight. And so what this does, I think you can kind of maybe see it here, is it's stripes. But how it stripes is you hold the yarn. You can kind of see I was holding it double up here and single down here. Maybe you can't. You'll be able to see it once I have more of it knit than just this. But yeah, you basically knit a number of rows with a single strand, and then a number of rows with 2 strands held together, which gives this kind of neat striping effect. I am doing it in the lead colorway. What am I knitting this on? I did a gauge swatch and I liked the fabric I got with this. This is a 4mm US 6 on my Luca needles. Yeah. And I like it so far. I just haven't knit on it much because I've been sock obsessed. So this is one of the things I am looking forward to knitting. This and my spring cleaning shawl this week. It will be so wonderful once I have these heels done of the other socks to be able to focus on those. And then I have only 2 more whips, which I know I really went for it in terms of casting on this week. So the other one I showed you last week, I had begun it last week, and I kind of really made some serious progress. So I had mentioned I was doing the Coziest Memories blanket, and how I just got frustrated and was like, fuck it, this is going to take forever to knit a blanket with fingering weight yarn, because I think I enjoy sizable blankets. Like, lap blankets don't really do it for me. I like to really be able to cuddle and get my feet under them and everything. I live in Minnesota, people. So yeah, it's going to take a long time to knit a blanket that I like the size of out of fingering weight yarn. So if you remember last week, I was only to like here, I think. And then I added on several more colors of my granny scrap Afghan. So this is basically fingering weight scraps of 100 yards or less. That is not a mini. That's just left over. And I am just crocheting them. I'm just going and making a giant freaking granny square. That's all I'm doing, is just going around, crocheting around and around and around. It's really fun. And what I'm doing to make it fun, to keep my brain interested too, is so how I put, as I'm choosing randomly, I'm kind of turning it into a self-striping yarn experience, even though it's not self-striping yarn, just to like keep my ADHD part of my brain entertained. So what I do is I have the scraps in my yarn bowl and I won't look, and I'll just reach down and grab one, and that's the next one I add. So that's how I'm choosing, which is really fun. And it makes it look very like crazy Afghan, but I'm totally down for crazy scrap Afghans. I'm down for that. So the next color I'm doing right now is a blue. And I think what I'll do in the future, so I've worked through this, other than the Finch that I just got from Muse Fiber. Oh, and I don't know if I said it, it's musefiberco.com or muse2320.com. And I'll put a link to them in the show notes. I'll put a link to Forest Fiber Arts in the show notes in the box down there. Yeah. So this is the last of those scraps that I have left that I have to put in here, and the Finch that I just made. So then what I'll do is I'll just add the yarns as they come to me to this Afghan. So that's that. So once I was out of fingering weight yarn and I'd gone through it all, I also misplaced my crochet hook, my F hook, which I'm like, dang it. So I think I'm going to try and, maybe I'll try and make it to a yarn store tomorrow and get one. I'm supposed to go out with my sister later. And actually I have to go to Chicago Avenue anyway tomorrow. So maybe I'll go to Stephen B and see if they have Luca hooks. And if so, get one. Anyway, I lost mine, I think, in the back seat of my dad's car. He went to look for it for me when he drove me home the other week. But he says, no, I don't see it. But I know he's 70. And, I know it's the same color as like the floor mats in his back seat of his car. And I basically ripped my bedroom apart. So I know it's got to be there. Anyway, once I finished those scraps, I was like, I need to start on my worsted scraps. But once again, I don't want to do just like something little. I want big size blankets. And I wanted to do something kind of different, not totally the same, not just a granny square going around and around. So I decided and so just so you know, I'm kind of a new crocheter. I mean, I did one other kid's giant granny square blanket, and that's it. And then that. And I've like single crocheted edges on, but I'm just kind of learning and watching YouTube as I need it. I think my tension has always frustrated me. Like even with this, I'll show you in a second, because I took crochet lessons once and I got frustrated because of the tension, but I've kind of realized the way to do that is just to keep crocheting. So like a scrap blanket feels like a safe way to practice that, like not super high stakes. Like I'm not doing a garment so if my tension or gauge is weird from row to row, it will be bad. It's just a blanket. So yeah, so I'm doing the granny stripes blanket. I am doing a pattern, actually. I'm following a pattern. I believe the crochet designer is Attic 24, which I will put up here. And this is what I have so far. I'm on the like third stripe, I think, third or fourth. So it started with the gray and then it went to this yellowish, which these are actually Brooklyn tweed scraps. And then it went to this army green kind of color, which I'm still working on. And it's going to be nice and good size. I cast on or chained 218 or 219 stitches to begin. And there's like 72 clusters on the first row. I think my only tension problem so far is the first chain is definitely tighter gauge than the second. This second row, you can see how it kind of went, but that's okay. I figure it'll even out. I'm using different yarns. I can like just freaking crochet an edge around the whole thing when I'm done. I'm not stressed about it. So yeah, this I think is twin size. I don't know. It's big enough that it will be acceptable for me as a blanket in terms of size once it is done. So that is the last work in progress I have to show you today. So a lot going on. And the crochet, I just pick up willy-nilly. Just every now and then I'll just pick it up and work on it. Because it goes so fast. You can get a lot done in a really short amount of time. And it's just how I'm going to use my scraps. And I like it. Again, I prefer knitting for garments. I just like the fabric knitting makes, that thinner, lighter fabric that knitting makes for garments. But for a blanket, crochet makes a better fabric, just thicker, chunkier, faster to make into blankets. Yeah. So those are all my works in progress. Before I go on to acquisitions, we will do our mental health moment for the week. So I wanted to share this week. So last week I talked about the person in my classes who kind of left a mean letter and I wasn't sure what to do. And it's funny because so I'm in dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, as a patient. Yeah, and so that's one thing I say on here, and I put a disclaimer in my description for show notes too. Like, I'm not a licensed therapist or mental health care provider of any sort. I'm a mental health services consumer and patient. And so do not take what I say as any clinical advice. I put resources in my show notes as well. Like if you're in crisis and need help, there are crisis lines, but I believe you can also call those lines just to get hooked up with licensed providers in your area if you need them. And you can also go to NAMI.org, NAMI.org. I'll put that here. They have a whole list of resources I talked about in last show. If finances would be a barrier to you to getting help, they have resources for that. So yeah, because it's not inexpensive. So yeah. So last week I talked about the guy in my class, the person in my class who was wrote mean things in a letter, and I was like, what am I going to do about it? So in dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, which is basically like re-parenting your brain, kind of teaching your brain how to regulate, and it's all skills based, like it's research. I mean, they've done a lot of evidence. They have a lot of evidence to back it. It's research based. Like the pages where the tools we're learning and the skills we're learning have research behind them are starred in my binder, and there's like 1 million pages starred in the binder I have. Not 1 million, that's an exaggeration. But all of it to say, one of the skills we have to learn is radical acceptance, which is really hard for me. And radical acceptance is basically accepting what is. And not getting stuck in what you want things to be or what they're not, but radically accepting what things are. And interestingly, that's the section of DBT we're working through right now in my group therapy. So I realized that, because last week's episode, I talked about like, what should I do? Should I, write an open letter to the school newspaper, blah, 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 blah. And I thought about it this week, and I have decided to not do anything, to walk away. I've decided that this is a place of radical acceptance for me, and that I need to accept that I cannot right all the injustices in the world, which doesn't mean I don't work toward any injustice in the world. It's that I put my hand to what I'm supposed to put my hand to with intention and with in a balanced way. And it is not my job to educate this man. It is not my job to fix him. And he is the way he is, and I need to just radically accept that. So that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna do nothing. Which doesn't mean that in different situations I wouldn't be called to say something and stick up for myself. I would be, but I don't feel like I am in this one. This one isn't the one for, I think there are times when I'll stand up for myself and say something, and then there are times when I think you have to just realize at this point what you say is not going to change the other person, and that's what I'm radically accepting. And it's not my job to educate him about invisible illnesses and about academic accommodations and all of that. That's not my job. So I'm walking away from that, in case you were wondering from last week what I decided to do. So this week, one of the websites I talk about in several of the mental health moments is makeitokay.org. And they have tons of great resources. They also are one of the backers of the Hilarious World of Depression podcast, which is really funny. So they have this resource on their website that I wanted to share. And this link will be in the show notes. It's on makeitokay.org. And right at the top, along the top bar, there it says what to say. And I thought I would share this because, I think it's so much more helpful to learn what to do instead of what not to do. I mean, that's important as well, but I feel like in terms of mental illness, a lot of people say hurtful things with good intentions, but as I say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, that are really hurtful, and they don't realize it. Which is what Make It Okay is all about, like reducing the stigma around mental illness. So I'm going to share this. They have a list, do say and don't say, that I'm going to read. So let's start with, and I have to show you this sticker I got. You guys will like it. Neurodivergence, it's like a regular brain, but better. I got that sticker for my laptop because, all the college kids have all the stickers from Redbubble everywhere. You can get this on Redbubble if you like it, and I'll put a link to that too because I thought it was funny. Okay. And you can download tips for talking on this website, but I'll start with what don't say because we'll end on the do say. Don't say it could be worse. Don't say just deal with it. Don't say snap out of it. If we could snap out of it, we would, trust me. Don't say everyone feels that way sometimes. Don't say you may have brought this on yourself. Don't say we've all been there. Don't say you've got to pull yourself together. And don't say maybe try thinking happier thoughts. And what I would say with these, I think when I read these, I've had different ones of these said to me at various times in my life. I think these are all really invalidating and people don't realize it. Like when you say everyone feels that way sometimes, what I think when people say that, what they're trying to do is empathize. They're trying to empathize with the person, but instead, for me anyway, it just feels really invalidating of what I've gone through. So the do say list is way more validating. Do say, thanks for opening up to me. Do say, is there anything I can do to help? Do say, how can I help? Do say, thanks for sharing. Do say, I'm sorry to hear that. It must be tough. Do say, I'm here for you when you need me. Do say, I can't imagine what you're going through. Do say, people do get better. Do say, oh man, that sucks. Do say, can I drive you to an appointment? Or, how are you feeling today? And finally, I love you. Yeah. I think when I've been in really hard times with depression, like, I know nobody can fix it and make it better. Nobody can. Sometimes, though, it can feel comforting to have people validate my experience. Like, I don't expect other people to make the depression go away because they can't. But it does feel good to have people validate my experience, which I think all of those statements are. And this is for me, and everybody's different. And sometimes it feels good to me to have someone close by, someone just sitting with me. And they don't have to be doing or saying anything. We don't have to be interacting. Like, there's been times when just having someone sitting with me while I knit or do whatever can feel comforting. Because often when I'm in that space, I don't have the energy or capacity to like have lots of chit chat and interaction. I just want to sit. Yeah. So makeitokay.org, great resources. Check them out. Which brings us to acquisitions. Okay, so last week I went and stayed overnight at my parents in Hastings, Minnesota because I finished my school semester. Oh, by the way, last week I remember how I was procrastinating on my papers. I did finish them in time. I had them both written and turned them in Monday. Woot, woot. And so to celebrate on Wednesday, because I didn't see my mom for Mother's Day, I was like, okay, I'll go down to Hastings and see them. And I'm also going to go to Muse because I hadn't been there yet in person. So I went. And Sarah was there and working. And so I got to meet her in real life. And yeah, I put that in my Instagram this week as well. I shared that. So yeah, here are my procurements for Muse. Muse 2320 Fiber Company. Oh, and yeah, their website is muse2320fibercompany.com, fiber.com. So here's what I got. This is this is 100% superwash merino. This is called Matcha Latte, and this is fingering weight. I think, Crane Wife is the base. The base of this is called Crane Wife. The other one I showed you that was Finch. Finch might be I think it's the colorway, but it might be the base. Sorry, Sarah, that I'm totally jacking up this description. But yeah, it'll be the right thing on the pop-up bar. So this is the Crane Wife base, which is plied. I don't know how many. It is fingering weight, 100% superwash merino. It is soft and awesome. And this is the Matcha Latte colorway that I told you about last week. look at that. It is so matcha latte. I love it. Oh, okay, I'm gonna unwind one because that's what I do so we can see all the goodness. And like, it's kind of, there's some gray in there. And every now and then, and Sarah told me this, there's flecks of little, I don't know if you can see it, kind of reddish. Just little, not many, every now and then, because she said it's dyed with tobacco, I think, is what she said. Yeah, so this is the matcha latte from Muse 2320 Fiber in Hastings, Minnesota. You can go to their website and get some of this. She's always updating and putting new yarns on Instagram. So yeah, you can also follow them on Instagram. Okay. That was that. Oh, and this is going to be the Tanya. So, Caitlin Hunter, Boylan Knitworks released a new pattern, the Novelli T. And then she also said, hey, it's that's in her Italy series. And she said, if you get all 3, they're 30% off. So I did. And I want to knit through all 3. So this is going to be for Tanya. And I hope to this week cast on Maritimo. Is that how you pronounce it? I can't remember the first one. And then I'll do Novelli last. But this is going to be my Tanya. It only takes 2 skeins for the size I'm knitting. And I'm really excited. And I think it's going to be gorgeous. So yeah, that was one of my acquisitions. I also got this from Sarah, a Luca crochet hook. And this is, I think I got an H, which is a US 8. Yeah, here it says on the white. Yep, H, 5mm. And I got this to do my worsted crochet projects with. And then I said I was going to maybe get this, and I did. So, you know, Sarah at Muse, they have all these stitch markers that are brass and gold and coppery shaped goodness. You can't really see it, but that I love. And then there's a progress keeper that goes with it. And I got the feather one. I have the moon. There's Hamilton in his butt. You're welcome. He hasn't attacked these like fluff balls since I've set this space up until right now. So, you know, last week I had talked about how I got the moon progress keeper from them, which I did, and I wanted the feather, so I got the feather. And I like the feather because our oldest daughter, her nickname is Bird that we gave her. And so I just like the feather because it reminds me of her. And so I think of her, and yeah, when I knit, and I have the feather one. So yeah. And those are all my acquisitions. I do have a few things coming in the mail. Not many, just 2. But I want to cast on garments so badly. And so I think that's what I'm going to do this week. I'm going to knock out these heels tonight, or tonight and tomorrow, and just garment knit to my delight. I'll keep that one sock that isn't those like blue-green Patton's Croy socks. I'll keep those so that if I'm on public transit again this week and need to have a sock with me, if I don't feel like bringing a bigger project, I can do that. Although I don't mind bringing bigger projects, like in my fringe town bag, bringing those on the bus or train is totally fine by me. So yeah, I think that's it for this week. I've met like 48 minutes, which is plenty. So yeah, thank you everybody for being here. If you liked it, if you liked today's show, if you could give me a thumbs up or subscribe. And if you subscribe, you'll get notified whenever I release a new show. And I'm going to try and release them late Sunday night, early Monday morning. So I'm a night owl. It's totally a thing. And I've tried everything. Please do not send me get to sleep suggestions. According to my psychiatrist, it is really common for people with ADHD to have delayed sleep phase. syndrome. So I just don't get tired till later. And I've tried everything. And so, yeah, what I do instead is I just go to bed later and I kind of adapt my life around that. So I, like in the fall, my earliest class is 11 so that I can get enough rest. So I'm usually up pretty late at night. So, hey, if you're up late at night too and you ever see me on Insta, you can chat. Yeah, so most shows, all of that to say, most shows I will probably be recording and editing later in the evening, Sunday. I always have aspirations of doing it Sunday during the day and it never happens. So yeah, they'll probably go out late Sunday night, early Sunday morning, which is awesome for those of you who aren't in the States. It'll be like good times. Yeah. So like, subscribe. Thank you for joining me. I will be here next week to chat about yarn and awesome brains, and Hamilton I'm sure will make an appearance as he does most episodes. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me. Have a good week. Bye. Just wanted to make a quick video of my space as I set it up, just the space, some of my favorite things I have in here, and yeah. Also, I forgot to tell you about, I left out one acquisition. I also got from Muse in the Crane Wife base, this. And it is called Kitchen Sink, and I love it. So yeah, I wanted to make sure I included that. Yeah, so here's the knitting space. So there's my chair, and there's my project bags and bins. And this yellow bowl is where I will put my scrappy projects I'm working on. Here's the Elizabeth Zimmerman quote. And a little table where I keep like my little stitch markers, tools in a bowl, my wireless phone charger, all of that. Here's a quote by Annie Dillard that I love. How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. And that is a print that was done by Lunalux. And they did like, you know, letterpress. Lunalux is Jenny Undis, who's a letterpress artist. And yeah, I had got that print from her and I had it framed. Coffee table, hammer, because I'm going to be moving some artwork around. And then here's the cubbies I talked about. So on top, there's a bowl with some balls of fingering and stuff that's caked up already. Like that will move down below once I get the clear bins. Here is one of my favorite quotes from US Senator Paul Wellstone, who died tragically, but I like worked on his Senate campaign. We all do better when we all do better. And then that little tape measure was my grandmother's. And it's kind of vintage and it's made of cloth. And so I don't use it because I don't want I don't want it to break because I don't know what I would do with it, but I love having it. She was crafty and who I got my crafty jeans from. So I keep it there just to remind her. And most of these metal knitting needles are hers. The wood are just random ones I got, but the metal ones are hers. So I keep that there as well. Here's some printed patterns I bought. Here's books. This is where I keep my foot templates and a ruler and my like sock measuring tape. Here is my candy jar of leftovers, fingering weight, worsted, other, yeah. More. This is just random scraps that are like tiny little bits and bobs that if I ever need stuffing for something, I'll have. Here's my knit blockers. This is more really super chunky yarn and yarn balled up. Yeah, I try and keep these out. You know, they'll all be in the plastic bin eventually and I'll be able to see through them. But yeah, so this is my little lovely knitting nook. And then there's a couch behind me, but I'm not going to show it because it is full of crap. Okay, bye.